Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen of the House, I rise today with remarks on the occasion of having served 23 years in the Iowa House, and on the occasion that I am voluntarily leaving this good place and seeking to find the same welcoming environment across the rotunda in the Senate. As I reflect on the years, I have some thoughts and some random memories, and although somewhat chronological, they're not in any particular order, and I'd like to share some of those with you tonight. A brief history and some milestones, some highlights, certainly people, places, and things that have marked my way and influenced me and have had influence, hopefully, on this institution and, of course, the good people of Iowa that sent me here. First, some fun facts that the librarians helped me out with. I've recorded over 9,000 votes and served with 8 speakers. I've had 12 different places to stay and houses, had 10 different clerks that work with me, and approximately 450 pages over these times to run errands for me. But some background here, as what is often the custom. In 1992, when apparently Representative Grassley was very young, he mentioned that the other day to me, I was a clerk for Representative Bob Dvorsky. I sat over there similar to where Tim Kucina sits. Bob has been a boss, a friend, a mentor, and a roommate here in Des Moines for many of my years, and he's retiring this year as well. Here at the Capitol, at that time in 1992, and Representative Taylor was there as well, apparently. I learned that just the other day. At the Capitol in 1992, there were no laptops. There was no internet, no cell phones, no Facebook, no email, and no Twitter. So, think about that. There were no cameras in our system, and we did have a mezzanine level, typing pools, and a Sperry mainframe computer that was so complicated to navigate that when you were looking for something, you could wait 20 minutes for the dot matrix printout to come out. We had a bank of 10 telephone booths back here in the lobby lounge, and in order for us clerks to write dozens and dozens of letters that we had to for the members, we had to wait till the ever-dreaded caucus to get in the mezzanine level up here and type our correspondence. Thank goodness for the supervisor of clerks and the fearless leader, Virginia Rowan, for helping us navigate all of the job and the technology we had at that time. We worked every Friday back then, and usually about 1 o'clock, and I would always run over here to Big Daddy's to fetch barbecue sandwiches for Representatives Dvorsky and John Connors, Bill Bernal, Stu Iverson, and Rep. Halverson. The one from Ways and Means Committee, not the Rep. Halverson from North Central Iowa. So bipartisan lunches were always a good thing, something we need more of. Terry Branstad was the governor, and the Democrats had the House. I succeeded Dave Epley as Bob's clerk, and later Dave joined our caucus, and to this day has been a tireless worker for us, for our caucus. After being Dvorsky's clerk, I joined the House, and later my clerk, Abby Finkenauer, was elected to the House, and she seeks higher office. So being Bob Dvorsky's clerk is a good thing for many people. I learned an awful lot that year, and quite frankly, it prepared me for what was to come, but I could never have planned it, even if I wanted to. In 1995, my hometown state representative, Richard Running, Kirsten Running, Mark Wart's dad, called to ask me if I wanted to run for his seat. He was leaving the office after a number of years in the House and the Senate and back to the House to take a position as the Undersecretary of Labor out of Kansas City. I never had an interest in running because my representative was doing a great job. I spoke with my now wife of 23 years, Kim, and after discussing this opening game changer, I threw my hat in the ring. Then a whirlwind 40-day special election campaign landed me this job that I've been blessed to have ever since. During the campaign, Kim accepted my proposal of marriage, and we were married in December of that year. A special election in June is not when people are thinking about voting, and it didn't take me long, however, to find a way to connect to the people. I stated my goal of writing good legislation and unwriting bad legislation as the main reason to vote for me. Growing up in a family of 4, my father was a minister, my mother was a teacher, and she taught where our kids later went to school. But in the campaign, I was able to show, through my personal background and degree in political science and experience as a union representative and a clerk here, that the reasons to vote for me were proof that I do know what I was talking about when I said we've got good legislation and bad legislation, and there's plenty of both. So I connected with so many people, and we had much in common, including my connections to Jefferson High School. My state senator, Wally Horn, was a teacher of mine at Jefferson, as well as a mentor. He and Phyllis are strong supporters, and they have positively influenced and helped me, quite frankly, from before day one. Representative Rich Running gave me all his campaign secrets, and his daughter Kirsten was one of my first and biggest door knockers. The good news for me was, because she and her family were good campaigners. Later, she was elected in a special election, just like me. After I won, Speaker of the House Ron Corbett congratulated me on a hard-fought victory and graciously offered to swear me in anywhere of my choosing. While being in late June, we weren't in session, but he would make the trip to Des Moines so I could be sworn here in the well if I chose to. However, we chose the steps of Jefferson High School as my swearing-in spot because it meant so much to me and my family and my constituents. The only picture I have of that moment is here on my desk with Speaker Corbett, with Jefferson High School in the background, and you can feel free to come see it because I didn't get permission earlier to get the thing. So in 1996 was my first legislative session here as a representative. When I arrived, I inherited the seat vacated by longtime Rep. Rich Running. In this seat here in the back row is where I've been ever since. And people know, all you all know, when you first get your seat, you might move around, but if you have a really good one, you just stay here. And that's the rules. Those are the rules, or that's the custom anyway. And there's always been a leader sitting with a couple of desks away. And sometimes it's been a Republican leader, but mostly the Democratic leader. And the proximity to the discussions and the actions that take place make a huge difference. Even as a freshman, I seemed to know a lot about what was going on better than most because basically I was minding my own business, sitting here working quietly at my desk, and I had a front row seat right here in the back row. So of all of the sessions I've been to, a couple highlights there's really only been 4 that we were in the majority. And the first year of those 4 was a totally new experience. I'd been here for 11 years yet, but by that time we had email and internet and cell phone and things, and I enjoyed the learning curve. Second year was fun as well. We started really getting into the majority and being able to make decisions. The third year, it was a little tougher, right? Budgets were getting tight and we had to make some tougher decisions. The fourth year was a blur, and it was over in a record time, 85 days. And so one of my memories of being in the majority was I had an 80-year-old constituent who came to the Capitol. I was chair of Justice Systems, and it must have been the winter of '08, I believe. I was chair of the subcommittee on Justice Systems. I was running late to the committee, and it couldn't start without me. I saw her at the front door at the chamber, and I tried to explain I was in a hurry, but I looked her in the eye, and I said, "Lita, what can I do for you?" And after we talked for a few minutes, I had a great idea. She would accompany me to the meeting that I needed to chair, and I could introduce her to the 51 people assembled across the hall here that I had kept waiting. She could see her legislator at work, and I could explain my tardiness. She said, "Okay." Rep. Stade and I, a couple of years later, left session early one day to go back to her funeral. Thank you, Lita, for all you've done for me. Once we had a big storm many years ago, not like what we had a couple days ago, but a big storm, and it knocked out all the power. But we were still in session. And so it knocked out the power so much that we were debating a speed limit bill. And and it was, nonpartisan, and so you didn't know for sure how the outcome was going to be. You couldn't say, all Democrats are going to vote one way, Republicans another. Christopher Rance wasn't in leadership then, but he was for the bill, and he was running around, and I was running around. We were talking. Power was out, and so the vote called, and the clerk had to call the roll. We had no idea what the outcome was going to be unless you started keeping track with hash marks all the way through. And we thought about how that would be in this place many years ago without all the electronics that we have. Again, like in the neighborhood, I just talk about a few folks here in my neighborhood. Even today, the neighborhood that I live and work in, I've been here the whole time. It's valuable, and it makes an impact. I think that's true with everybody, but I've been able to just be here in all of my years. Again, Representative Art Stade and his wife Susan usually laugh at my jokes, which is good because my voice travels this direction and they hear everything I say. Representative Kearns and his wife Diane are in front of me here, and I knew Jerry before I came to the House through his work in Lee County and as a union representative. So adding them to the neighborhood and a few committees that we serve on has always been good. And good luck and congratulations on your retirement, Jerry. And of course, our most senior member, Dennis Cahoon. I'm glad that you're in this neighborhood as well. I've always enjoyed your counsel and your calm demeanor. And of course, our steak dinners that we have, at least one every year. And hope they will continue next year. And by the way, I don't know much about this deal about Jeff Mitchell, but if I did know Jeff Mitchell, I think you might owe me a couple of beers or something. That's an inside joke. Representative Kerr, appreciate you being here in this neighborhood as well. And that, well, you may not always react to things I say off mic. I appreciate it if you're just hiding that very well, but it's been good to get to know you. And this spring break, my son and David and I got to tour the air traffic control at the airport, so it was fun getting to know you as well. My longtime leader and fellow Graceland alum, Representative Mark Smith, sits at this end of the neighborhood, and my fellow Graceland alum and kindred spirit, Representative Scott Orth, to my left, sits at this end. Mark, thank you for the work that you do and the effort you've put in on behalf of others. Your social work background and counseling training and years of experience clearly pays off in this place, or rather, to the benefit of others, because I'm not sure about the pay. But thanks also for making this wood desk extension for me that you made and loaning me your brand new car when I needed it. True friend. Scott, thank you for your guidance and your counsel in this place. In our church and throughout our shared history that predates this place, it is everlasting. Scott and I are members of the Community of Christ Church, and like Congressman Boswell, former Senate President Leonard Boswell, who's also from Graceland, I remember one time Scott told me that more than 100 years ago in our little church, there was a representative elected from Decatur County, and he served here. And so that legacy is strong, and it continues on today, Scott. Representative Lisa Heddens, a couple doors down, she and I have served on one committee or another for as long as I can remember, and I've always admired her for her work on legislation. It's often the toughest bills here in the legislature, DHS and funding and related bills. She has a kind heart, and it's reflected in her actions here on the floor. For years, Lisa and I would exchange music that we had common tastes for, and we did that on these things called compact discs. I don't know if anybody knows about those nowadays. My kids don't. We wish her congratulations in her personal endeavors. Representative Mary Master, she's someone you all know, but you don't know her as well, maybe as I do, unless you spend your entire legislative career sitting next to her. And I've always had Mary Master on at least one committee. Out of respect, I will not share with you the off-mic vicissitudes that often occur during debate, but what I will share is obvious. She is a mother, a proud grandmother, and a teacher, a real teacher. She doesn't just fight for teachers and fight for education and proper funding for education in a vacuum. She lives it, and she believes it. She teaches me something new every day. Every single time during debate, she's real, she's serious, she's on stage, on the record. Other times at dinner, I get to hear about the grandkids and her struggles with technology and the ever-evolving cell phone feature, something that's so funny it's laugh out loud funny, life in general. And she's a pioneer lawmaker, legislator. Mary's my anchor on my right, and Bruce is my anchor on my left. Representative Bruce Hunter. This is a man that you don't have to worry about and look very far to find out exactly where he stands. He's true blue. He's dedicated. He's tireless, and he's helpful, courteous, and kind, like a Boy Scout, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. But he's also balanced, because he also supports the Girl Scouts. More evidence right here. In one year, and with him help and others' help, my daughter made some records with selling Girl Scout cookies, so thank you, Bruce. And he saves them for the end of the year. He's balanced, and he's never had a harsh word from me. And I've seen Bruce work. I've seen him prepare, and I've seen him ready himself for floor debate, and he always encourages me, and he always has my back. The fights he engages in are always the same fights that I'm proud to stand and fight alongside him. In all the years, I could just count in single digits the times that he and I have voted differently. He's rarely wrong, just those few times that he voted opposite me. Just kidding. Representative Cindy Winkler. I always remember her calling me by my first and my last name as my name. And as she is eminently qualified, and she's detailed in her analysis of any particular complicated education material. She's always prepared, and she always has a highlighter, a copy of the bill, a fiscal note, and takes everything seriously. And I wrote that, but actually yesterday I asked her for a highlighter in committee, and she had one. It's true. And I served with her on always the committee, and we have friends outside of the legislature as well. Representative Vicki Lensing, my personal sommelier. Sommelier is a wine steward, a trained, knowledgeable wine professional, normally working in fine restaurants, who specializes in all aspects of wine and the service and the food pairing. Viniculture. I use this term with endearment. We always share the same tastes, and mostly because she suggests something, and it's only the best, and I always like it. In Vicky's other life, running a funeral home, she's natural with compassion and confidence in dealing with grief. And I always appreciate her service to the legislature during the every other year memorial service, and I've often volunteered to read memorials under her direction. My most fond memory, of course, is a bill that allowed someone to cap a bottle of unfinished wine securely and seal it in a bag. It's a safety thing so that it prevents you from drinking more than you should, and also so that you don't waste the fine wine that you pay for. Representative Bruce Behringer. Bruce is one of my roommates. For the past 3 years, I enjoyed his company, and we always talk politics, and he has a well-rounded interest outside the building as a teacher and a professional musician. He practices guitar every day in our apartment, and it's a real treat. And some nights we break out in song, and we sing till wee hours of the morning. Representative Tim Cassina, he joined our house this year, and he's one of my 5 roommates or so. When he first moved in, he's a firefighter by trade, 32 years. January, first thing he did was he changed the batteries in the smoke detectors. He shoveled the sidewalks. I'm not kidding. He shoveled the sidewalks, and he put a little bit of environmentally friendly salt on the sidewalks to prevent slips and falls, and our home was safe for the year. And Kirsten is someone I have a especially close bond with because of Cedar Rapids history, and we conducted a legislative survey together for many years, and we probably sent out 20,000 surveys in the last few years. And Representative Finkenauer is also very special to me. This year, she's a fellow retiree from the House. She clerked for me for a couple of years, a few years back, and prior to that, she was a speaker's page. And then after a domino effect of people running for different offices, I had the honor and privilege of introducing her when she ran for the House of Representatives from Dubuque. She had won a hard-fought victory, and she has much to offer. And she has Kim and my support, and we wish her best wishes on her run for Congress. To the rest of my caucus, and to my lawyer friends, Mary, Rick, Brian, Joe, Todd, and Helen, someday I may be able to repay you or pay it forward for the free legal advice each one of you have given me at any one different point or another. I'm certainly not intentionally leaving anyone out. There are several members I did not mention. To those in my caucus, please know that I believe that we are bonded simply by being on the same team and fighting the same fights, and I thank you. To the staff, most of the time in farewell speeches, the staff are mentioned, and I don't want to miss that as well. I appreciate the staff and those that work behind the scenes, the clerk's office and the staff, Doreen, Sue, Megan, Emily, and many others. And these folks, however, have especially worked for me and helped me over the years, the LSA staff and others, each of you. Kelly is probably my favorite, though, because she passes out paychecks, and the others don't. Our caucus staff is very dedicated, too, thanks to Joe and Rochelle and Jessica, Joe and Bill and Brian, Dave and Kelsey, Jake and Dean. This year especially, I've worked closely with Brian and Joe, and we also welcomed Allison this year to fill a vacancy from Anna, who staffed the committee that I chaired in Justice. George Will, a conservative columnist and avid sports fan, once wrote that football in America represents 2 of the worst things present in our society: violence and committee meetings. I've always liked that quote. When I think of committee meetings, I call them classes. The people around me always hear me say, well, it's time to go to state government class. And it should be like a class, because at the beginning of the year, you get a syllabus, you take attendance, you get your work assignments, you have to do some required reading, you got some homework that you do. And then, as George Will would say, what's wrong with this legislature? My feeling is that if we do good work in our committees, the rest of it will take care of itself as you face election to get graded. And by now, all the effort and the homework that we've done together and that I've done over the years, I think I should probably have like a master's degree in poli-sci. One of the milestones over my years, and these are just random thoughts, but one of them was when we hosted the Chinese Premier Xi Jinping. That was a particularly interesting day, really. We started off in caucus where we got a protocol lesson to welcome and to be appropriate with our foreign dignitaries and our foreign visitors. And I had some business cards, but they were at my home, and we were told how to hand them to a person and how to receive them, and you don't just shove them in your pocket. So it was very fascinating. I didn't have any, so I quick called the printers, got some printed up. Forgot to put my email on there so I could use them for other events. But I want to give a shout out to newly elected Senator Annette Sweeney. She was in the House then. She had her cards printed that afternoon as well, and all of her pertinent information was on the front in English, and on the back it was in Chinese. And that night we were handing out our cards, and I thought that was kind of impressive. The Capitol that day went under transformation. We had a lot of staff setting up tables and putting mood lighting and the speaker system, et cetera. Then we all had to leave the building, and we got vetted, and then we just certain dignitaries, and we came back in and we sat down. And while we did have folks at our desk or our table that were foreign nationals, we had a language barrier, so we didn't talk much with them. But we also had it was a different opportunity to sit and talk with Representative Dave Heaton and Roger Thomas and Bill Dotzler and Phyllis Thiede and Helen Miller. They were also all at my table. We went to the law library for a pre-reception, and we met governors from neighboring states and Supreme Court justices and world global power traders. It was very fascinating. And there was a harpist on the mezzanine staircase, and they had really good food. And I know from the other day that Dave and his wife run, both he and his wife ran the Irish restaurant in Mount Pleasant. And Dave and I had this conversation that night of, one, how good the food was and what a fun, interesting event it was. But also think about this with the security. You can't just come in and cook the food and prepare. It had to be almost prepared and then kept warm, but you can't overcook it. And so he was giving me all the internal restaurateur details about how this happened. And I appreciate that, Dave. That was a fun time. Legislative landmarks. As a union representative, I have the unique opportunity to work for working people every day in the legislature and back home at my day job. The changes from last year in House File 291 are very devastating, and I do not think that you know how harmful and unnecessary they are. In my farewell speech, that's about all I want to say about that. The biggest bill that I was dealt with over the years was this one called Dangerous Exotic Wild Animals as Pets Ban. And ultimately, this was not a partisan issue. Rather, it was a thing to do for public safety, for animal safety, animal welfare, protection of our livestock and our ag industry, and good public policy. We had a deputy sheriff in a western county who found a mountain lion dead without claws. That animal was clearly kept as a pet. We had a drug dealer ostensibly legally keeping a Bengal tiger as a pet to guard his drug house and to keep authorities out. So we had to do this for these reasons. This piece of legislation was most interesting to me because I was involved in every aspect of how a bill becomes a law process. Subcommittee, full committee, the floor, back and forth. And each time we had to make a small little change to get the governor's signature. To get it passed, we had to make a small change to accommodate another vote and not take us off of our course of public safety. For example, when we didn't want to harm our livestock industry, so we had to be careful about our definitions that we put in the bill. So we would carve out an exception for an alligator farmer in Grinnell, a snake venom milker in Davenport, and a private zoo in Manchester. Each time we would gather another vote, and I would work closely with Senator Joe Sang, a longtime veterinarian, who also helped me with the scientific nature of the aspects of the bill. In the end, we passed it in a bipartisan manner, and it was not unanimous, but it is the law today. Safety legislation. I became known in some circles as that guy who always tries to improve worker safety, and for that I'm proud. From year after year after year of introducing proposals for close clearance warning devices and railroad crossing signal devices and safe walkways, rail yards for railroad workers and first aids kits. I've specialized on fighting for the workers' compensation, the second injury fund for twice injured people, occupational hearing loss benefits repeal, employment rights, unemployment rights, pension plans, collective bargaining enhancements, and many more. My brother is a University of Iowa trained MD and a leukemia survivor. He survived by receiving stem cells from the umbilical cord of 2 different newborn babies in Australia. So I introduced legislation designed to encourage the voluntary donations of cord blood. After the floods in 2008, we had created a new committee called the Rebuild Iowa Committee, and we did disaster mitigation, pre-planning for disasters, watershed management, floodplain management, and grant programming and hazard mitigation. That took a lot of our time. We raised the minimum wage. The infrastructure investments all across this state, downtown Des Moines, the East Village, in Cedar Rapids, West Side, East Side, Time Check, Czech Village, Rompot, and other places, as Representative Kirsten Running Markert would say, West Side, Best Side, representing. So I had the Clean Air Act, the indoor smoke. smoking ban. I was worried about this bill at first, but soon thereafter, and for years later, I do think this is one of the best things that we've ever did here in this place. And I even get thanked for it on a regular basis. Most recently, last Saturday in Cedar Rapids. Building the new Fort Madison Penitentiary. The old one was pre-Civil War. Think about that. Often as a legislator, we get opportunities to take tours. So some of the tours that made an impact on me are something I'll highlight. Now, the Fort Madison Penitentiary, the new one and the old one, it's a very secure prison. Crime lab. One time across the street we had the crime lab before they wanted to show us how crowded they were, so we took a tour over there. And I saw 900 pounds of pot. It was fascinating. I saw a vacuum cleaner that contained carpet fibers, and our lab technicians could then use those to prosecute a murder case. I mean, we all understand a murder weapon, the crime technicians would analyze that, but a vacuum cleaner, not something that you would normally think of. That was fascinating. The Palo nuclear power plant, it's about 6 miles as the crow flies from my house. That is one high-tech security place. And it's got redundant systems on top of redundant systems, which I can't talk about. And I've been to the top of the Capitol Dome, outside to the sub-basements, the tunnels of Old Hampshire Auditorium in Iowa City, to bill signings in the old capital of Iowa City, to a special legislative sessions in the historical building, inaugurations at the old Veterans Auditorium and the new Wells Fargo Arena. Newly elected reps Bruce Hunter and Lisa Heddens and I once took a tour for DCI behind the scenes at a casino when Bruce was brand new, Lisa was brand new. We went down there and the DCI agents taught us something like totally fascinating, that how they catch cheaters, right? So maybe they're cheating on craps or something. And if you think of a cheater, you think of the cheaters cheating the house. You know, okay, they're cheating a casino. But really, they're also cheating the other patrons there. And he showed us some videos and how they catch them. And it made me think of it in a whole new light. It was very fascinating. And one of the all-time highlights was the end of drive-by deliveries. We put a minimum 24-hour hospital stay for a new mom. We were deep in the minority at that time, and it was the right thing to do, and we worked with the majority party, and we achieved consensus, the governor's signature, and bipartisan success for moms in this state. And of course, I can't forget the floods of 2008. I'm grateful for the legislators coming together and fighting together to bring my city back, and the myriad of other actions trying to survive the floods. Some notes on Republican members. Gary Worthen. Gary and I had a good working relationship when he was the chair of justice and I was ranking member. We were straight with each other. We never played games. He was wrong on a number of occasions, but he never lied, and he always answered my questions. One time, at my request, he co-signed a letter with me demanding an audit of the 6th District CBCs. This happened, and it furthered transparency, and I respect him for it, and I wanted to say so. Madam Speaker, you have always been gracious to me, and I appreciate your service here in the House, and I'm grateful for our discussions at the annual tourism event, and look forward to more of those. And Speaker Pro Tem, same as goes for you. Appreciate your work and your dedication, and you should also be an auctioneer sometimes. You should try that. I mean that sincerely, not snarky at all. And certain compliments, a couple compliments I want to share with you that I've received. Representative Jack Drake. God bless him. One day after a long day of debate many years ago, he said, "I like the way you never raise your voice in anger, and you never have a harsh word for anyone. And when you speak, Representative Taylor, I listen." Speaker Craig Paulson once came over to me right after a long debate. I was giving some rebuttal remarks and citing some facts and opinions that I had qualified, and I had a long speech on we were fighting for preschool and keeping class size small. And he came over to me and he said, "That was by far the best speech you've ever given on the floor." And I just thought that, from a sitting speaker of another party coming over to tell me that, was very, very kind. And also, Craig and I had a good working relationship. We often would do radio programs back home for the call-in shows. There's also, of course, many folks out in the lobby who help run this place, and they give us a lot of good information. And I won't mention much about them because I'm hoping to go across the aisle, so I probably better not mention that, or whoever do. But I will mention one. Tom Fay is a former state representative, but he's also announced his retirement as a lobbyist. That's why I'm mentioning him. 32 years, and we wish him well. In memoriam, and this is not a comprehensive list by any means, but just people that I want to make a note of. Polly Lipsman, our caucus director. She was motherly, she cared, she was pushy in a good way. She demanded excellence, and I'm better for it. She wrote speeches for me to deliver back home and always made me look good. She got here in the morning before I did, and she stayed late beyond my time. Thank you, Polly. Don Avenson, a legislative giant, the self-proclaimed inventor of Funnel Week. Thanks, Don, for all that and what you do. Don was a mentor to many, and he died just right after Siney died this last year. Minette Doderer, a legislative giant, a true pioneer in legislating. I was going to say a true woman pioneer, but she would have corrected me because being a woman was obvious, so saying so would have been redundant. In her later years, when I first hit the scene, she would not hesitate to stop me in caucus and explain some things to me and teach me, and I followed her. And for probably most of the people in the room probably don't know her, but you might know of her. And if not, you might thank her for this: liquor by the drink and cold beer. Years before I got here. Joe Sang. I never will forget the idea that he had about free college for Davenport High School graduates. The details and the idea are not the point of me bringing that up. It's just amazing how he was shopping the idea around, shopping the amendment around, and he talked to nearly every one of us. And that is a task that should be required of all of us at some time or another. No matter if you're majority or minority, walk around, speak with everybody, try to convince them about and lay out your case. We don't actually do that much nowadays, and it's even rarer to do across party lines. Family. My wife, Kim, has allowed me to do this job, and she's made it possible and continues to make it possible by often doing the work of both parents to our children, now 16 and 14. And I think they might be listening right now while I'm away in Des Moines. I can't really overstate that. I'm a better person because of her behind the scenes. She does so much throughout the year, not just in the legislative session, that allows me to do this job. As I think about my 23 years in the House of Representatives, there are certain milestones, of course, like the concern over Y2K or the first Democratic governor elected in 40 years, things like this. But really, in 2001, the birth of our first child, in 2003, the birth of our second child, if I look back, the only thing I can really remember is just the challenges and the changes of parenthood and that what brings to our lives. And Kim's role and our success in raising our children, in spite of our best efforts, cannot be overlooked. My mom was a teacher, my dad is a minister, as I mentioned. Each of them taught me to make the most out of each and every day. And you should try to learn something each and every day. I've tried to do that here in the legislature, and while we do have long meetings and long days, if you do that, it really helps here. And today I actually learned that you can actually turn off the page button if you just hit it a second time. I didn't know that before. I sincerely hope that this is not goodbye to all of you, that I will see you again next year across the rotunda. Thank you.